he's been appointed to the Corporation Commission, and he just won the primary, so he is a candidate. We'll probably have more candidates at the next meeting. But anyways, I'd like to welcome our local Andy Tobin.
Thank you. It's good to be in a place with a basket of deplorables we all are. That's how we call it. So, anyway, I know Hillary's still not feeling very well today, but neither are we, knowing she is running for president. So, thank you for that really elongated introduction. I appreciate it very. Nothing's changed here at the Republican Men's Forum. So, I want to first off say thank you, not just for voting for me, but for Yavapai County, as Noel and I know Karen and other elected officials and mayor. We always know that this is the county that makes us all look good in Arizona, because we actually go vote, and we actually campaign, and we campaign hard. So I want to thank you, and on behalf of those candidates who run, who may not have gotten there, and those that did, congratulations. And we're the Republican Party. We don't have people tell us whether we're allowed to run or not. We just do. And we're allowed to have fights. We think that's part of our nature, and I think that's a good part of it too. You have here in Legislative District 1 only one Democrat running. There's a very important reason, and they didn't have a primary. That's another very important reason. Does that sound a little bit like Hillary, if you kind of move Bernie out of the way? It may sound a little bit like the Corporation Commission. You only have 2 people running. There's a reason. They politic in the back room, and they don't allow other people to express ideas and talk about what's important. And subsequently, that's what's going to cost them an election here in November again. So what I've usually done as I've traveled around the state, as I've shared with folks, I said, I know our party has the tendency to get in some rough ways, and I know we hustle bustle. Noel and I had our fights. We're good friends. Karen and I had to beat her up a few times. No, it wasn't you, was it? Anyway, we're good friends. So listen, at the end of the day, what they're counting on is that we won't go vote. What they're counting on is that the trends that are here in Yavapai County won't expand around Arizona. I'm going to share with you that if you have yet to decide whether you want to engage in this race, and I don't mean to suggest you're not going to be voting, I mean to suggest that we need to get our votes out. We need to get mom and dad, and we need to get our brothers and sisters, and we need to get all those folks, especially those who may have moved into Arizona, or moved into a new county, or have a new address. This is who we are. This is how we win races. It's also how we can lose races if we don't. So if you're looking for a good reason to have people help us in November, just think of the Supreme Court and call it a day. Because with this current former Secretary of State / New York City Senator / First Lady of the United States, this will help destroy our country and keep it heading in the very wrong path. And I'm not so sure we're recoverable. 8 years Obama has just about taken as much out of me and a lot of you as I think we could have ever expected to in this country. So we need, and this is my plea and this is my pitch, because I'm traveling the state. I was down in close to Douglas Friday night, a little town called Pierce. It's about 35 miles. You probably know where that is. You've been on the border. It's about 35 miles north of that. My wife and I have had this ongoing thing. I'll call her sometimes when I get like an hour away, and I'll say, "Hey, honey, send the boyfriend home. I'll be there in an hour." Well, Friday night she said she would. And I'm thinking, I probably ought to stay at home a little bit more frequently. But the reason I share that with you is because reaching out in these far vast locations of our great state is a real priority for me. Rural Arizona is slowly but surely being depleted. And it's not just the fact that, smaller communities were getting edged out by the voting, by the voting straight to Maricopa County, and Pima County. But this president has done just about everything they can to push rural America into the tank. And you know it. This fight on coal has been shutting down small communities. Go to Bullhead City if you want to know what an ex-coal producing town looks like. You remember we used to have a coal power plant there? Many of you might. You can't even find where it was now. They didn't just close it down. It's gone. The pipes are gone, the concrete's gone. You wouldn't even know it's there. Unless you went into town and saw all the signs for rent on their office buildings and all the homes for rent in their community to find out what 300 jobs lost really means. Well, that's their fight with rural America, and they're serious about it. They like the idea of everybody going into democratically controlled major cities where, of course, crime is bigger and of course, they're falling apart. We need our rural communities to continue to thrive. We need our rural communities to continue to stand up. And right here, Yavapai County, my home, is a perfect example. Because here in this place, we vote. You have to vote more. So if you're getting a call to come volunteer or a letter to say, hey, can you show up and help us? It's important for all of us. Those registrations mean a lot. Now, I'll talk to you about the Corporation Commission in a minute, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what's really happening down there. And I know it's probably boring for Noel and Karen because they're very much aware as I am. There's a lot of headwinds on this election. And it's not what people want to say. It's not Trump-Hillary. You know, we recognize that we have two candidates that are struggling with about a 20+% undecided no. We get it. Set that aside for a moment. Arizona is a Republican state. I think we're going to fare better than they think they're going to do here. But set that aside for a moment. You just heard about ballot initiatives that are on the ballot. The minimum wage is on the ballot, and we also have this marijuana piece, which I think it's just amazing. With all the problems we have in this country right now, I got an idea. Why don't we see if we can put more marijuana out on the streets? I just struggle with our sense of value here. So those are headwinds. Because if you go down to Pima County, that stuff's passing. And if you can remember medical marijuana, that passed because of Pima County. So I'm going to share with you that Joe Arpaio is struggling in Maricopa County. So there's another headwind you might not be hearing about. But there is a big fight for sheriff in Maricopa County, and there are a lot of registrations going on down there. So we still have time to register our neighbors. We still have time to register our friends. So this is my last plea for you. I'll take questions when I'm done, if that's okay. But my last plea for you is, don't hesitate. You've got neighbors, you know you do, you got friends, you know you do, and family. Go contact them. It's easy to register and easy to get up for the polls. It's a big election, as you know. So, ma'am, did you have a question about that? I'll take that now.
Last date for registration?
Last date for registration is the 30th? 10th. October 10th, 30 days prior to the election. So, okay. So let me give you a sense of where we're going. I left the speaker's office, I guess, a year and a half ago, something like. I was on my way up the hill, called my wife, said, I'm going to send the boyfriend home. The governor called, and they're looking for help at weights and measures. This is in January. We were all at Governor Ducey's swearing in, and you know, I had no idea this was happening. I was happy to go back to my business. And it was important because the Super Bowl was coming. You all remember that, a little football game that they played. And whatever happened to the Cardinals last night, don't even get me started. So here we go. The governor calls. We've got a problem over weights and measures. Weights and Measures handled all of the taxi licensing. 6,000 taxis and limousines and all that. We handle all that, among other things. So at that time, we have 13 cases of fines that we've been fining people for using Uber, and already in Superior Court with the Super Bowl coming. So now you're getting a sense why he's calling me. So my function was to come down, end all these lawsuits on our citizens and our people who just want to do business, and go and beg Karen and Noel to help get an Uber Lyft bill passed, which they did in March or April of that year. So that was the purpose of me going to Weights and Measures. And what I was able to do, because they were able to get their work done, I was able then to lift that piece of work out of the Department of Weights and Measures with, again, the legislators' help, both Karen and Noel. I was able to lift that out of the Department of Weights and Measures and hand it to the Department of Motor Vehicles, where you're probably thinking that's where it belongs anyway, right? Well, that's kind of what we thought, so we thought it'd be a good idea. Of course, the press didn't like it because we're shutting down an agency. Nothing could be further from the truth. What we did was we made it better, we made it faster, we put the other pieces in the Department of Agriculture, which is in 37 other states, done the same exact way, and all we did was got rid of big salaries and extra HR and administrative people we didn't need, and Noel and Karen helped me and voted to get rid of an agency. So yeah, how many states do that? How many states do that? So that one's gone, and then I'm on my way back up the hill thinking, okay, I'm on my way back to the office, and the governor calls again, and this time the director of insurance had resigned. And so, knowing I was in the insurance business, I turned around and headed back down to the Department of Insurance, where I got confirmed, and I immediately started consolidating that with the Department of Banking, which the governor also put me in charge of. And we started with the HR, and we started with government affairs. So we started taking more of high executive spots that we just don't need. So the reason I share that with you is because there was a bigger crisis at the Corporation Commission, and I wasn't able to finish my work, but we got a lot of it done. And it's on the table as we move forward, if they can actually bring that all together. So when the governor called, that many of you remember Susan Bittersmith, who had resigned. And so in February last year, the governor asked me to take her seat at the Corporation Commission, which I've done. So let me just fast forward. One more compliment to both Noel and Karen is when I preface this by speaking about rural Arizona. It's a big thing. Rural Arizona, water in rural Arizona, these things are starting to ferment a little. Noel and Karen were able to get $500,000. I know it's not a lot of money, but I'll tell you why it works. Into emergency water fund for rural water companies. And I'll explain why they were so intent on getting this started. Because there's almost 300 of them. And by and large, most of them are in a bad way. And most of them are in a bad way because it costs them money for a lawyer and 2 CPAs. No disrespect to my lawyers and CPA friends here. But that was hard on a lot of these small water companies. So what would happen? They wouldn't come to the Corporation Commission at all. So what's going on is they have 20, 30 years from our old days of platting Arizona, 20, 30, 40 years of practice without ever having reinvested in their infrastructure. That's why this emergency fund is so important. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there are people in Arizona, our neighbors, and they're not in urban Arizona, they're in rural Arizona, who wake up and have no water. No water. Who wake up and have uranium in their water. So basically, no water. Or arsenic that we've experienced out here in many occasions, even here in Yavapai County. That's why this emergency fund is important. Because we have to find a way for us to now move forward on these small water companies that are across the state who are in very, very bad shape. So I wanted to tip my hat to Noel and Karen for helping on that. It is not easy to get a rural bill and certainly rural appropriation down at the legislature. Trust me, I know. And those dollars will be used specifically to go to places like Citrus Park, which is just east of Yuma if you've never heard of it, where we have some of our senior citizens, some of our veterans, who picked up the phone and say, we're out of water and I don't know what to do. So out of that money, we're able to reimburse for at least get a new pump in there, and now we're moving forward to see if we can get a neighboring water company to start taking it over. When you have uranium, and we're up in Sanders, Arizona, how many know where Sanders is? We're on the reservation, aren't we? We're right on the line. We actually got the Navajo Nation to actually cross the line off the reservation to blend water in Sanders so that we can get those people water. And they're still $2 million short in infrastructure to make sure that the water piping will stand. So rural Arizona is just very different. You don't hear these stories when you're down in Phoenix. People don't worry about water. In fact, if you drive around down Phoenix, you'll still see them washing their sidewalks off with water, or you'll still see them flooding their grass with water. You know, there's something that to be said for folks in rural Arizona that really we work hard at managing our resources, don't we? And we should be an example. And so I just shared this with you because this is a small microcosm of what has not gone on at the Corporation Commission. It is the largest bureaucracy that I've seen yet in Arizona government, and I've seen some. We have about 300 people. A lot of folks don't know what we do. So the press kind of got on me because I made some suggestions about, hey, maybe we can consolidate some of these things here too. Imagine that. You know, we have the Department of Transportation who works with the U.S. Department of Transportation on railroads. Well, the Corporation Commission works on railroads. We work on, there's now, I think we're at 3,000 miles of rail, and we had one person. One. We have 2,500 crossings, and we had one person. One. Now I've doubled it. Still seems like it's shorthanded, doesn't it? And now at least we have some folks out there. You go to places like just fixed one in Kearney. You think anybody in Phoenix is sitting there waiting to take the phone call for somebody in Kearney saying there's a problem with the railroad crossing? Doesn't happen, folks. That's why it's important for us rural folks to really work together on these issues. So we have more people there. I just think that we might get a better bang for our buck moving those folks from the Corporation Commission, putting with the Department of Transportation, which by the way is where all the grants and stuff come from for our rail. So, of course, the first thing the press wants to say is power grabbing, because those 4 people are worth an awful lot of power somehow, I suppose. But that's what they want to do. And all I think we do in rural Arizona is continue to look for efficiencies. And that's why you sent Noel and Karen down there. That's why you sent me down there, to look for efficiencies in government. And that's all we're really doing. At the Department of Insurance, we have inspectors who look out for you. Look out for Medicare saints. We look out for bad investors. Guess where we have the securities department in the state of Arizona? It's at the Corporation Commission. Not at banking, not at insurance, at the Corporation Commission. We have 50 people there. And I'm not saying they're not doing a good job, but doesn't it just make sense to maybe have that conversation about shouldn't maybe we consolidate some of the banking, insurance, and Department of Corporation Commission inspectors together where we can use some economies of scale? That's all we're really looking at doing. Let's use another one. When you're a corporation, you're an LLC in the state of Arizona, guess where your first step is? You're going to the Corporation Commission, aren't you, so you can file. You do realize that once you do that, you have to run to the Secretary of State's office, right? Because you have to check on trade names, right? You have to make sure I don't take, fan contracting or something and use it as my corporation. So you go from my building, then you go over to see Secretary Reagan's office, and then you come back to my building. Does it maybe jive that we should at least have the conversation about, can we do this in one place? Can we do this in one place at one time? So for those of you that saw the press article saying these are big power grabs, they're not. I can't make these moves on my own. The governor can't. Even the legislature can't, and they can help us. We have to send those to you because the Corporation Commission is a separately acknowledged constitutional authority in the state of Arizona, and those functions are embedded in it. So we're going to have to come to the voters to make those changes. But to not have those conversations is just not what I'm about. So I wanted to share that with you because when the governor appointed me, I really had no intention of sticking around until I started to see, once again, another place that just isn't standing there for rural Arizona. And they're not. Remember when I first found out that we had 3,000 miles of rail, I was at Nogales, right at the border, and I was with Ray, and we're walking, he's got his gauge counter, and we're literally walking the rail. And I said, goodness gracious, how many of these rails do you walk every year? Well, there's like half of it in one year and half of it in the other. And I said, how many is half? I said, 1,500. I said, you walk 3,000 miles? Well, they have a caboose that they travel on a lot of it. But that's about our economy. That's about our commerce. And people being able to do business with our Corporation Commission sends a message nationwide. If we're doing it quickly, if we're doing it efficiently, and if we're promoting jobs in an economy that our lawmakers down there trying to make work on a daily basis. So I share with you, that's why I stayed, that's why I decided to run. The last time I ran for something, I ran against Anchor Patrick. So maybe I'll give you a little heads up on that Congressional District 1 race. Tom O'Halloran has now decided he's not well, of course, we knew he wasn't a Republican, and then we knew he really wasn't an independent. So he's finally landed on the Hillary train, and he's a Democrat now up in Congressional District 1. Again, we have forces working against us. We had a big ugly primary, we're out of it, let's move forward. They spent $12 million to beat me when I ran against Anchor Patrick. 12 million. So you hear these dark money conversations that go on all the time, I bet you nobody heard about that one. So, but I don't think they're going to be spending that on Congressional District 1 this time, because Ann is now trying to get a U.S. Senate seat, and I think the driver is, if Hillary believes that she's got a shot at Arizona, they will be spending more money here, and they will be spending it with the congressional, with the Senate race and a presidential race. So that will have a lot of impact on what happens up there in Congressional District 1. The truth is that we actually won by 10,000 votes in District 1 until you threw in the 40 precincts that Anchor Patrick went up and gathered votes in on the Navajo and White Mountain Apache. And they beat us by 20,000 votes in only 11 places. The reason that's significant is there's only 300 plus precincts, so it's only 11 votes. So it's all about what's going on and whether Republicans can get their votes out in other places. Martha McSally's race is close, as you probably already figured. You know, Martha won by a couple hundred votes. We were kind of running mates. You know, CD1 was kind of tied to her district down there, and she won by a couple hundred votes last time. The Democrats really want that seat back. Running a guy named Matt, what's Matt's name? Former. Matt's somebody. Hines. That's it. Okay. See, it's good. The name ID is important. So Matt Hines is down there. He's former state lawmaker, and he actually went back to work in Washington for CMS to try to fix Obamacare. So the good news is he couldn't fix it, I guess, and now that means he's allowed to run for Congress. So he's running for Congress against Martha McSally. She'll need our help as well. It's very close and a very, very, very tight race there. As far as the CD5 race, you know, I've not heard today if that's still in court. Is there any update on the Andy Biggs?
They're doing a
Ms.
recount.
Jones? Is that now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they're recounting now and then they go to court. So that one will still fester. That's a close race. Noel and I was like 42 votes. Poor Knowles, he's still hurt over that one. But anyway, 42 votes, and that was 10 years ago in Yavapai County with 4 people running. 9 votes, now 11 or whatever it is, that's pretty tight. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share with you the lay of the land that was out there. A lot of good things that are going on over at the Corporation Commission. We are changing policies. It's just very slow. It's not a cabinet level spot, so it's not like I'm in charge of an agency. You need 3 votes to make changes over there, so it's a little bit different. So, but we're making some steps. So anyway, so I want to make sure I came up. I was very respectful and appreciative of all the work that you've done to help all us Republicans across the way. Don't give up now. We have this very small window left to make it all work come November. And there's so much at stake, obviously. It's good to have you folks out there carrying the flag for us. So anyway, I thought that's kind of what I wanted to say. And I know you want to open up if there's any questions or any of that stuff.
And explain that we only have 1 microphone today,
Oh,
so you have to shout your questions.
okay.
Maybe
Barry said you have to yell at me. So go ahead. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on the race going forward? Go ahead.
Is there a slate? I know that you're running, Burns is running.
Yeah.
Is there people that you should check?
Yeah, so here's, in the Corporation Commission race, Boyd Dunn, if you haven't met him, he's a former mayor out in Chandler, a good guy. Bob Burns, who's a former Senate president as well, is a good guy. We're all meeting tomorrow morning to see if we're going to run a slate with the state. That seems like the very best first step to do, because then what you can do is you can just fundraise into one place, and you can use the state, the Arizona Republican Party to help with the mail and all that stuff. So that we're having that meeting tomorrow morning. So and Bob is just up here on Saturday at our picnic as well. So, and I've been seeing these guys all around the state. So the Democrats are trying to pose this issue at the Corporation Commission, that don't elect Republicans, it's a mess over there. The truth is, it is a bit of a mess over there. I may be the only one that hasn't been under investigation, whether it be, I think they were doing text messaging, they're public record requesting everything that's going out of there. So they've got a message. And the two Democrats that are running, Bill Wendell, is just like Tom Chapin. Bill was a former Republican, and now he is a Democrat because Doug Ducey didn't retain him at the Industrial Commission when Doug became the governor of Arizona. So I think he got mad, and now he's a Democrat, which he was probably anyway. So when Tom Chapin, who several of us know, was up in Coconino County, he actually replaced Ann Kirkpatrick at the state legislature when she went to run for Congress the first time. And now he's moved down to Tucson, so he's running. So they are running two people against us, and their mode is, and they're clean elections people. So they're giving a bunch of their money to the state Democrat Party so they can do whatever they really want to do with clean election money. But it's not to be misunderstood. Maricopa County, what happens in that county right now will have a big impact on, especially down ballot races. So you'll hear more about that when we're done tomorrow. Anybody else? Representative King.
Andy, could you address Senator Flake and his position against our nominee, Trump? And I want to say it in this respect. I mean, I can understand his position, but you have to marry that up with the support for the nominee of the party and what it's doing to our party. And can you kind of just speak to that issue?
Yeah, I think Governor Brewer had told Jeff just to be quiet and stop talking about it. So many of you know that I was Governor Romney's Arizona chairman, and I traveled the country, and I was on the Governor Romney team. When you're running in the party, we've had some tough races. It's just what it is. If you're running in the party, the rules is that you got to support, the winner. I mean, that's just where the rules are. And if you can't, support the winner, well, don't do anything to hurt them. And I think at the end of the day, what's going on there just appears to be very personal to me. And it seems to be, I'm not so sure there's many more people with a bigger ego in the show right now than Mr. Trump or Mr. Clay, but it seems to me they've had some friction, and that is not helpful. So, but I don't really see that fight going on with anybody else right now. And I have been watching the Senate race around the country because the U.S. Senate obviously is at risk for the majority. And it's actually been improving. So I'm hoping that I would love those two guys. What am I going to do in the morning? I'm going to sit down with Bob Burns. I'm going to sit down with Boyd Dunn. We're going to have some coffee in the morning and go, okay, where do we agree? Well, we already know where we all agree on coal, and we don't want to elect Democrats to the Corporation Commission. So that's a starting point. I just wish they would have that phone call. So I really, I look at it and just say, we don't have any time left. We need to heal and move. And at the end of the day, I think most of us have. So I think I would hope that Jeff and our nominee do the same. That's all. Question?
Andy, for those of us who keep close track of this secret corporation commission, since the primary is over, who is the cast of characters, who's running, and who should we vote for?
Say you vote for Burns, Dunn, and Tobin. Or Tobin, Dunn, and Burns, or whatever way it fits. You'll see all three of us on there. It's important you vote for all three, because what the Democrats are trying to do, in fact, Congressman Gosar spoke to this when we had our meeting out at the golf course, our breakfast, our party breakfast. He actually said to me, he goes, they're trying to get in through the Corporation Commission. That's where they're trying to break through. Because there isn't a Democrat in public office statewide in Arizona, and it hasn't been since we said goodbye to Janet Napolitano and people who were on the Corporation Commission right after that. So they are trying to get their foothold into these Corporation Commission races. So much so that let's face it, the Democrats have no bench. I mean, let's look around. They have no bench. The Republicans run 2,000 people for president, and the Democrats got 3. So they have no bench. They have a very weak bench here, but they don't rely on anything other than the money, and is Hillary gonna come in and overvote Trump? And that's what they're relying on. So they filled the spots in order to steal a few so that they can come back in 2 years and maybe take the other seat or two away. So we're not gonna let them do that. Go ahead.
Andy, I'm not real clear on this issue of auditing APS and their financial political campaign contributions. So can you speak to your position on that?
Yeah.
Describe it a little bit.
Yeah, so that was kind of where the Burns went off the one side, and everybody else, the Republicans, were like, where is he going? So Bob Burns' view is that APS spent money and should be disclosing where that money got spent. The truth is that we already have APS's books because they file a rate case. So if you come and file a rate case with me, or your water company or utility company, whatever, the first thing I do is I bring all these accountants to the table and gather all your stuff, and we start going through why you need a rate case. Okay, so the first piece is we already have all APS's. What Bob is looking at is he's looking at 2 years back to the 2014 election, where APS may or may not have, I'd say they did, because they didn't deny it, they just haven't acknowledged it either. So it's been frustrating for me. But even at that, the answer is it's a Citizens United case because this has something to do more with Pinnacle West, the parent company. So that's where the fight is. So when I first got to the Corporation Commission, and I told Bob, I said, here, why don't you just subpoena them? Quit going to the Attorney General's office, just go subpoena them. Because this is what's and he did that last week, or 2 weeks ago, finally. So what happens is that he subpoenas them. Now he's got APS who has to say, no, we're not going to give you your stuff. And guess where it's going? It's going to court, where it should have been probably last June. So you'll see that fight moving. My goal is I don't believe anyone with business at the Corporation Commission should be participating at all. I mean, at all. If we have issues in front of us, they shouldn't be writing checks. On the other hand, there's a lot of companies who are not regulated by us, which are the solar companies. And when I was asked at a debate, do I want to regulate solar? I mean, you folks just heard me. I spend most of my time getting rid of things we regulate. So why would I want to regulate another industry? So my answer is no. Solar then can spend money because they're an intervener. And they have more financial issues at stake in that rate case than possibly even APS themselves. So the question is, should we all be on the same page? Well, Solar City discloses and APS doesn't, and they're all spending money. So I don't want any of them to spend money. But if they're spending money, they should be disclosing. So in my view, when Bob wanted to hire this lawyer to do this investigation, I did not let that happen. What I did was I created an opportunity for us to work together and say, because we don't have any guidelines at the Corporation Commission. I mean, the clean elections folks have guidelines. You know, we have law. But remember, Citizens United doesn't agree with Bob. It just doesn't. So the next step, and quite frankly, a lot of the business community is like, other companies that might want to come here, if they're thinking that the Corporation Commission can just come see their parent company's books, that might be a problem too. So you can see where this is like a divergent issue, and Republicans argue on both sides of this. My view is that I would hope going forward we can come and settle to agree to some guidelines about how everybody's supposed to behave. And then whether or not he can go backwards in time in a court hearing or not on his current subpoena, we're just gonna have to find. But my guess is that'll find its way all the way back to where it was, possibly the Supreme Court. It could take years used to that. So the answer is everybody should stay out if you have business there. And clearly that's not happening. Solar City spending money. APS didn't spend any money that I'm even aware of, or Pinwest here in the primary, which is what they were doing here 2 years ago. So, I'm sorry?
That you're aware of.
That I'm aware of. Well, I know they didn't spend it on me because I think I ended up with $8,000 in the race statewide. I spent most of my money that I raised just to get petitions on the ballot. So I spent less money on the statewide race, I think, than most people spend on a city council race in the ballot. So, but to my knowledge, after the reports, I don't see that they're there. That doesn't mean they won't come in. That doesn't mean they won't come in the general. I'm not saying they won't come in. If they see Solar City is going to come in with more money, maybe they do. And I just hope that they'll disclose it then and make it all fair. But right now, I think Solar City spent $600,000 and change, maybe more, on the primary races, and I don't think anybody else spent any money like that. I think I got the chamber in Tucson gave me $500. I think I got $1,000 from one pack. I think an insurance company still thought I was in the legislature, so they sent me a check for $500. Anyway, so it's not a lot of money in my race, but it could get very important. So we'll see where it goes. So and that's really up to Bob, how he wants to pursue this. So, did that help?
Well, I just think that a public utility that has a monopoly,
Right.
it should be held to a higher standard
Right.
than a private corporation like Solar City.
And what about their parent company?
Same thing.
So that's where the difference is. They believe that their parent company is not the same, and it's not about rate making. That's what they believe. But I will argue, if you believe it's okay for Solar City to spend as much money as they want, and as long as they're disclosing, to have the upper hand on who's going to be at the Corporation Commission, I would argue that that is bad practice.
Well, Citizens United is something that has been decided.
Yeah, that's where APS is landed, because of the Citizens United case. So I think it's still, we're just gonna have to see where it rolls out. I would hope that we'd somehow come to an agreement going forward with there are no guidelines at the Corporation Commission. There are none at all. I mean, this has been going on for however long, but there are no guidelines there that I can even answer. I'm only there 8 months. So, and by the way, APS supported my opponent, Ann Kirkpatrick, in a congressional race. So it's not like I'm really very happy with them anyway, so I just share that with you. So, yes, sir.
Is it true, I read online that the FBI is investigating the Corporation Commission and the Secretary of State. Is that true, and what are they?
I don't know, is the Secretary of State's office included in that? I don't know. They're
On the 2014 election with Michelle Reagan.
I think what you're referring to is the FBI was coming to the Corporation Commission about the 2014 race. Corporation commissioners who were possibly trying to influence utilities to get involved in that race that Michelle was in. So the answer is yes, they are there
Okay, they're
at the Corporation Commission, but I'm not aware that they're at the Secretary of State's office. So, and the U.S. Attorney is there. So, anyway, and APS is doing their own internal audit anyway, and we have all their books. So, I mean, eventually, it's like anything else. Eventually, we're all going to know. APS didn't say that they didn't fund in 2 years ago. My guess is if they just said they did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And everybody would be like, what are you going to do then? Well, we admit it, there it is. So, anyhow, big issues coming up right now in the Corporation Commission. Grandfathering of solar, which if the press really cared, they would be telling everyone that 2 weeks ago, I already created that precedence in the UNSD case. So, so no matter what happens going forward on net metering, I've already set a standard for the grandfathering piece, which when you're watching the legislature going on and the governor trying to get these people at the same table and they were going to get in a fight and they wanted to have this thing, another proposition out on the ballot, so we've already done the grandfathering piece. The next piece has to do with this net metering. What is the price for net metering? What is the price they should reimburse people going forward on their rooftop solar? So that's where the fight is right now. And it might surprise you to know that when we picked that number in the retail rate, how many years ago it was, there was no formula. It was just, we'll just make it this. Well, we have a docket called the value of solar docket, which we're hoping will be concluded here in October, which will establish a value of rooftop solar. If that's the case, we can then use that number to go forward and pay a reasonable rate of return back to folks who are powering to whatever utility it might be. And the last part was demand charges. I think you all probably have heard about the demand charge battle. So I put a stake in the heart of demand charges already 3 weeks ago, even though they're still involved in several rate cases. And there's some real opportunities with demand charges, don't get me wrong. The problem is the utilities APS included, have not made their case, in my view. They have not been able to explain how the demand charge works. They have not been able to explain how the consumer can best work within the confines of a demand charge. Right now, that demand charge, and I don't know if any of you are on it or not, I was on it in the aerospace business, and I was very grateful to have it right here in Preston, because then I can make sure that I was using the time that they were giving me at the lower rate to have my staff come in. It's very complex the way I read it, and my parents can't read it, something's not right. So you'll see that I basically put a stake in the heart of the demand charge on the same UNSC case. So you can see where, you know, I was sent there to try to end this and kind of get it cleaned up. And I think we're starting to get there, and you'll see some big fights going forward on these rate cases anyway. But the truth of the matter is power will get more expensive. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to get more expensive because of this attack on coal. Coal is becoming a diminished resource, not because we don't have enough of it, just because the president doesn't like it. And right now, we are so protected because the price and value of natural gas is so cheap that we're still able to see reasonable rates. That is our base load, those two factors, plus we are lucky enough to have Palo Verde. If you didn't hear, California is shutting down their 2 nuclear plants. In fact, I think they just did in San Diego. There's none. So we have base load demand. And right now that's good, but even the utilities are forecasting, and I'm sure none of you are going to be surprised, that the price for natural gas will be double in 10 years. Double. So you can see that every time we take a tool out of the toolbox, like they've been wanting to diminish coal, if you start seeing more of the coal being diminished and more of the natural gas going up, because we think we can power everything on solar and renewables, we're just not there yet. We're just not there yet, but we're getting there. Storage is a big thing. I just had a storage workshop. You'll see more of that coming out. But for right now, we've got a crisis right now with our coal, because it is the cheapest power we've got that's consistent, keeps our base load up. California is giving away their solar. They're actually paying us to take solar as we speak. But remember, Arizona's crisis for our utilities is really only about 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 4 months. Remember that. When it's hot here, we have a problem. And that's it. It's called peak. So my view is we don't need this huge storage facility so we can store a year's worth of energy. We need to be able to store for 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. I think that the next great invention, the next great technology would be that those folks who are putting solar on may also be able to attach a small, storage unit that allows them to roll into those cheaper costs when the sun is high in the day on solar. You can store some of that and then use it during your peak hours. That's how I see us being able to better utilize that. And the more of these products available, the more tools in the toolbox for us to utilize for ourselves, but also our businesses, I think we're in a better place in Arizona. So keep your eye open. Councilwoman.
Can the Corporation Commission, what can you do to bring the coal back? I know it's the EPA and Obama hates it, and this is happening.
Let Trump.
So the question is, what can we do? What can we do on the EPA? I mean, how many times has the legislature fought back on the EPA, and how many letters did we write? How many times have we been to Navajo generating station standing up there yelling and carrying on? How many times have we gone back to DC? This president, believes he has executive authority that's far-reaching. And it's not just, you see what the EPA has been able to do to our rivers not far up in Colorado. There's a nice little gold river coming down the chute now because of what they did, and they environmentally ruined that entire community for decades going forward. And the waterways of the U.S. is another travesty where they want to, so we have to change the president. And we have to keep a Senate. And at the end of the day, we have bureaucrats who are making choices for us. And what you have is you keep sending people to the legislature, thank goodness, who keep saying, no, we're the electeds, we're responsible, we'll make those decisions. And in Washington, that's not that way. They're just a lot of bureaucrats. What Obamacare has turned into. Elect a new president, keep a Republican Senate. I mean, that's the answer.
So you, as a corporation commission, can only be a bulletin board?
Well, we do what you guys do, you sue people. Yeah, so we're in court with these folks, we're, just like the legislature is, just like the governor is, we're all sitting there, but that's part of the president's mantra. He lets people sit in court for all these years, just like we did while Obama took effect, and that's where we're at. We're not winning a whole lot. And now it's time. So back to my opening comment, please vote for a Supreme Court in November. We need another children meeting. So anyway,